All right, thanks for joining me. Today we're going to take a look at an iBuyPower pre-built PC. This one is the Slate 9, and this one has a 7800 X3D for the CPU, and for the GPU it's got a 9070 XT. And I did a similar kind of review quite a while ago from CyberPower PC, which had the same CPU and GPU, although I'm not sure about the brand of the GPU. We'll find out here in a little bit. Let's take a look. Let's crack this open and see what we got. Right, so I got this PC at Newegg because after all the other PCs I reviewed, I have not done one from Newegg yet. And I've got this one for a pretty good price at $1,520. So I'm interested to see what we get out of this. All right. This is, I think the last time I did an iBuyPower PC, it was a Y40 case PC, and it gave me kind of the same notice, which is don't return it to the store. Yeah, this is to let you know to contact iBuyPower. But if I have to return it, I'm probably gonna return it to Newegg, or at least attempt to. All right, so here's a notice right here for how to remove this glass panel. And so we'll open it up here shortly. Let's take a look at some of the accessories that the PC came with. By the way, let me know in the comments if you guys want me to, on future pre-built PCs, do a closer inspection and testing out of the accessories, such as like the mice and the keyboards and things like that. I usually just kind of gloss over that stuff, and I'm not sure how curious you guys are about stuff like that. Multi-button mouse, a couple of buttons on the side, looks like it lights up. So that's the mouse. Pretty soft, non-mechanical keyboard, so nothing special. It's got some weight to it though, the keyboard does. It's a free gift offer, a 1-month PC Game Pass. Let's see here, I got an ASRock installation guide for the graphics card. So it looks like we're gonna get an ASRock GPU. The previous CyberPower PC that I did a review on that had the same CPU and same GPU had a gigabyte one in there. The extra SATA cable for, you know, HDDs and 2.5-inch drives. You got the Wi-Fi antenna and the power cable for the PC. All right, so that's it. That's what you get with this PC. All right, so as I pointed out earlier, this is to show you how to open up the glass panel. Right here, we got the sticker that points down to the GPU, so that it makes sure that you hook up your monitor to the GPU, not up here. Right here on top, we've got the power button, 2 USB Type A's, a mic jack, a headphone jack, and a USB Type C. I'm assuming it's a 3.2 Gen 1 or a 3.1 USB Type C. All right, so let's open this up. Looks like it just pulls out. All right, so the side panel is nubbed in, and it's a little stiff and hard to pull out. So just be careful, because if you pull out too hard, it has the possibility of it falling, because there's nothing to hold it, right? And so if you're not careful and you pull it out too hard, it could fall. So just be careful with that. All right, so there's our packing. It's in pretty snug, which is good. Sometimes you get it sitting a little bit on the loose side, which makes me worry about handling. And it looks like we've got the ASRock Steel Legend GPU. Interestingly enough, they went with 2 white sticks of RAM. Let's pull one of these out and take a closer look. And this is DDR5 RGB GeForce Delta from Teamgroup. And the other slight disappointment is that although this CPU doesn't necessarily need one, there is plenty of room for a 360mm AIO, but they put in a 240mm, which is probably part of the cost savings that you're getting for the PC. That clicking is me hitting the delete button so that I can get into the BIOS. And there we are. There's the 7800 X3D, 32 gigs of RAM. BIOS update or build date was in May. We are in October, so we're 5 months out. So we're probably needing to update the BIOS, but since this is the out-of-box experience, we're not going to update it at this point. CPU temp is at 39, a little on the high side for idle. Looks like we've got XMP 1 enabled, but this is an AMD CPU with an AMD motherboard, so we're gonna change that to Expo 1. Not that it's gonna change anything, it should be the same readings and settings between XMP and Expo, but just for stability's sake, I'd rather do Expo if I've got a AMD CPU in there. And there's our 1 terabyte storage. This is from AGI. I haven't used AGI in the past, so I don't really have a lot of experience with them, but we'll figure that out as we go. The fans aren't too loud right now, and this is the out-of-box setting, so I'm just going to keep it that way. 40 to 45 C is when it'll start ramping up, so we'll see how loud this thing gets. All right, so let's go into the advanced settings and see what they've got in there. X3D gaming mode is disabled, and this is a 7800 X3D. If it was like the 9900 X3D or the 7950 X3D or 9950 X3D or something like that, I would leave it disabled because that gives you the ability to use both sides of the CCDs. Whereas if you're primarily gaming and that's really all you're doing, except for maybe a little bit here and there and no productivity, then there's nothing wrong with you enabling that. Precision Boost Overdrive is in auto, which there's nothing wrong with doing that. Infinity Fabric is on auto. Now for the 7800 X3D, around 2000 megahertz is where you want it, but we're going to leave it on auto since that is the out-of-box experience. All right, so let's go ahead and get out of here and get into the desktop. Whoa. You seeing that? That does not look good. We might already be having a problem. That was interesting. So I turned the monitor off and back on again. All right, so looks like something was deleted here before, and I don't know why that's there because usually there's no icon there, but yeah, whatever. There's the Adrenaline software for the GPU. Looks like we've got some, all the normal Windows bloatware. This up here. There's that 7800 X3D, 32 gigs of RAM at 5600 megahertz or mega transfers. And there's that 1 terabyte AGI SSD, integrated graphics for the CPU. There is the 9070 XT. I find it interesting on the task manager where it doesn't show the CPU temperature on this, but it does show the GPU temperature. Okay. All right, so for the motherboard, it looks like we've got an MSI Pro B650 VC Wi-Fi. So that's more a little more on your budget side of the motherboards. I think that's probably worth 150, 170, something like that, but we'll look that stuff up. So it doesn't look like we have any conflicts, which is good. All right, so that's it. It does come with the Microsoft bloatware, but it doesn't look like any other bloatware is installed. which is nice to see, but you still got the bloatware that comes with Windows. All right, so now I'm gonna go off screen and do some benchmarking, and then I'll be right back with the teardown, and we'll talk about the results on the benchmark. All right, I'll be back. All right, so let's take this thing apart and do a check on the build quality. I'm gonna leave the stickers on just in case this PC is gonna get sent back from the reviews that were on there. It's a possibility, so we're gonna leave the stickers and everything on. All right, so let's start with the glass panel. Remember that this thing is, the finger hole is really shallow and it's nubbed in pretty tight. And there's a couple of slots on the bottom of the case and tabs on the bottom of the glass, but it will not hold that glass as it comes out, as you can see. So just be careful when pulling this thing out. All right, so let's see if, yep, this comes off. Pretty hefty piece. Porosity is probably, I don't know, like maybe 30 or 20% porosity, but it's not bad. And from a filtration standpoint, I guess it can be good, but as I've said many times before, when you've got this kind of thing on top and this is set to exhaust, it does block some airflow, right? And kind of sometimes redirect some of that air back into the case, especially when you've got this open space right here. So just be aware. Let me get that on camera. This open space right here and this open space right here. So it'll come and hit some of this solid parts of the top, and it'll redirect it downward, right? Luckily there's some exhaust right here in the back, so it'll catch some of that and blow it out the back. But you know, kind of defeats the purpose of a filter when you're set to exhaust. All right, let's see if this front comes off. It does, but it is connected right here. So in order to take this off all the way, we're gonna have to disconnect this, which is kind of tricky if you got it sitting upright. There we go. Now this front panel, this part is glass right here, and then you've got a similar porosity as the top of the PC case for the front right there. And then you've got same porosity, but even more framework right here to block potential air. And then similarly on the side right there, right? And so these will intake air on the side, top, and bottom for the intake fans right here. But it does limit a decent amount of airflow, and there's a little porosity on top too, but that is blocked off right here. So there's really no point to this being porous up top. This panel comes up pretty easily, but similar to the glass panel, just remember that the tabs down here and for here are not going to hold this side panel, so don't let it fall. You scratch it up and, you know. All right, let's take a look here and check to see if all the cables are secure. Let's undo this and take out the GPU. So we got two 8-pin PCIe power cables for this ASRock 9070 XT. This thumb screw is way too tight. and not a captive screw either. It's got the old style release catch right there, right here. There you go. And so this is, like I said, the ASRock Steel Legend 9070 XT. So here's a white version of it, which, as you can see, is a little bit longer, about the same in width, and probably the same in thickness too. Same thickness. All right, Gigabyte has 3 8-pin connectors, whereas the ASRock has 2. All right, so that's the GPU. And this is Teamgroup's T-Force Delta DDR5 RAM. Hopefully the camera will be able to pick that up. 5600 megatransfers at CL36. Don't ask me why they chose to put white sticks in there for a non-white build. It's almost everything else is black. So, weird choice. And here is the M.2 NVMe from AGI. As I said earlier, I'm not familiar with this particular manufacturer for SSDs, but I'll look it up and find out what the details are. You'll see the speeds right there. Let's check all the screws to make sure everything is secure. Oh, that one is loose. So let's screw this down secure. Okay. Let's take a look at thermal paste. That thermal paste is pretty thin. So it looks like a lot of it was just pushed off to the sides. But we didn't see anything in the benchmarks, as you'll see, that was of concern. Let's check the screws here. How about the top? Okay, that's good. All right. Well, that's a little bit on the disappointing side on iBuyPower's parts as far as the cable management goes. Could have secured some wires right here. There's a secure point right here. And they're using wire ties in some instances, like here and here. Yeah, that's a wire tie, that's a wire tie. That's a wire tie, there's a wire tie right here. But we got a zip tie here, and here, and here, here, here. So, you know, it's not like they have a shortage of zip ties. I don't know why they did wire ties. It's a little disappointing. There is a couple of sleds right here for 2.5-inch drives. And I don't see a drive cage for HDDs. There's also a filter on the bottom here for the power supply. It's one of those cheapy ones that, you know, crease easy, and it's sitting in the back without a tray to be able to pull it out. And so you pretty much have to power off your PC, kind of unplug it, turn it upside down to be able to put it back in. You could probably remove it without doing that, but putting it back in is These are a pain in the ass to put back in. There we go. All right. Let's take a look at the power supply, see what we got for power supply. Looks like it's from iBuyPower. 850 watt, 80 plus gold. It is an ATX 3.1 power supply, which is good because that's what supports the newer GPUs. And on the 12 volt rail, looks like we're at 850 watts, a pretty efficient power supply. Going back to these SSD sleds, looks like you have to unscrew these. Unscrew them. And looks like they slot in through here from these points. Slots in like that. Although it's a little warped, so it's loose on this side and tight on this side. All right, and it's plastic. So a little disappointing there. So it looks like iBuyPower is finding new ways to save money to bring their prices down, which is fine, I guess. But from a build quality standpoint, that does not make me very happy. By the way, this power supply is a non-modular power supply. That one's a little bit loose right there. All right, for the most part, screws are fine. There was one that was like maybe a quarter turn, maybe a little bit less loose. And we forgot to check these screws right here on the fans. At the top of the back I/O, you've got a flash BIOS button. Right below that, we've got an HDMI port, that's 2.1. Then we've got next to it a display port, that's version 1.4. Then we've got two USB type A 3.2 Gen 2s, that's 10 gigabits per second. And we've got the Ethernet port or LAN port at 2.5G. Then we've got a USB type C 3.2 Gen 2x2, and that's 20 gigabits per second. Right next to that is another USB type A 3.2 Gen 2 at 10 gigabits. Then we've got four USB type A 3.2 Gen 1s, those are the blue ports, at 5 gigabits per second. Then we've got the Wi-Fi / Bluetooth connectors for the antenna, and that's Wi-Fi 6E, and the Bluetooth supports 5.3. Then we got the audio inputs and outputs jacks, but no SPDIF on this one. That's about it, and I'm going to put this back together and we'll go through the benchmarks and I'll let you know my thoughts on the PC. I'll be right back. All right, let's get to the benchmarks, and apologies if you can hear the fans. They're a little bit on the loud side, but I'll talk about that here in a little bit, just so I don't forget anything. Got my handy dandy phone with my notes. All right, so we tested Cyberpunk 2077 on ultra settings. At 4K, we did 60.1 FPS on average, with 46 frames a second on the 1% lows. At 1440p, we did 125.9 average FPS with 1% lows at 85.7. At 1080p, we did 182.3 FPS on average with 1% lows at 115.1. The CPU temperature at its highest point got to 71.1 C. The power draw on the CPU was 81.7 watts. The GPU temperature got up to 63 C. The VRAM temperature got up to 80, and the hotspot was at 88. The GPU top power draw was at 343 watts. Then we did Black Myth Wukong at cinematic settings, and at 4K we did 73.2 FPS on average and 1% lows at 62. At 1440p we did 88.6 FPS on average, with 1% lows at 74.3. At 1080p, we did 96.4 FPS on average, 1% lows at 80.8. The CPU temperature, top temperature, got to 73.1 C. The CPU power draw topped out at 87.3 watts. The GPU's top temperature came in at 71 C. The VRAM topped out at 82 C. The hotspot at 94 C, which was a little bit concerning. That's pretty close to where I started getting worried. The GPU's top power draw came in at 353 watts. And we tested on 3D Mark's Steel Nomad. At 4K, we did 67.8 FPS on average, with 1% lows at 59.5. 1440p, we did 126.1 FPS on average and 108.5 on the 1% lows. And at 1080p, we did 185.8 FPS on average, with the 1% lows at 155.5. The CPU's top temperature came in at 76.5 C. The CPU's top temperature came in at 76.5 C. The CPU's top power draw was at 83.2 watts. The GPU's top temperature came in at 64 C. The VRAM came in at 82 C, and the hotspot at 88. The top power draw for the GPU was at 333 watts. Then we did firmware version 2.9.0.0. At 4K, we did an average of 123 FPS. At 1440p, we did an average of 236 FPS. And at 1080p, we did an average of 322 FPS. The CPU's top temperature while running firmware came in at 48.4 C, and top CPU power draw was at 43 watts. The GPU's top temperature came in at 61 C, the VRAM top temperature came in at 82, and the hotspot came in at 89, and the GPU's top power draw was at 340 watts. Then I use OCCT's combined stability test to seek out errors. And I use OCCT's version 13.1.12, which tested the CPU, the GPU, the VRAM, the RAM, and some 3D acceleration and 3D rendering. And during that time, there were no errors found, which is good. The CPU's top temperature during that run came in at 78.9 C, with the top CPU power draw at 88.6 watts. The GPU's top temperature came in at 67 C, VRAM came in at 86, and the hotspot came in at 93. Again, a little bit concerning at 93. The top GPU power draw came in at 353 watts. All right, so let's get to my thoughts on the PC. It's not a bad PC. I think, iBuyPower is looking for different ways of lessening their costs so that they can be more aggressive on their pricing, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But I am a little bit worried that, they're losing sight of some of the details. And so this PC I bought for $1,520 before tax. This one I got over at Newegg because I've never bought a pre-built over at Newegg, and it had 3.7 stars out of 5 for a review rating. That was after 13 customers reviewed this PC, and a decent chunk of the 6 that wrote anything, I think it was like 3 out of 6 had problems with the PC. I think 1 returned it and got another one, the same model, sent back to him because it shut itself off and wouldn't come back on. And 1 that went beyond their 30-day return policy and it wouldn't come back on. And another, I think, also had similar issues a couple of weeks after getting the PC. And so I wanted to get this PC not just because of the price, but because I wanted to see if I would get the same kind of problem or if I would get a repackaged PC that was returned. I don't think I got a repackaged PC from what I could tell, but it's possible, right? Which is a little bit worrisome, especially since, they didn't list this as a refurbished PC. But to be fair, it was $1,520, and comparable PCs with the 7800 X3D and a 9070 XT, and it ranged from 1700, I think, was the lowest price I could find other than this one. And I think it went all the way up to 23 or 2400. And now some of those had 2 terabyte NVMe's rather than 1 terabyte NVMe, but for the most part, everything else was pretty similar from the specs. At $1,520, it's not a bad price. If I got this PC for myself and not just for a review, then I would strongly consider getting a different case for it, right? And maybe even different fans and a 360 AIO, which, having said all of that, that kind of takes me right back up to around the 1800 to 1900 range. But all that being said, from the results and the build quality and everything, it's not a 1520 is not a bad buy. I try to, as a matter of fact, I tried to put together a PC with similar components, and I think the closest I got was a little over $1,600. So yeah, 1520, you get I believe it's a 1-year parts and labor warranty on this PC from iBuyPower. So yeah, it's not bad. I wish they would have picked a height case for it instead of this case. This case is a piece of crap. I'm not a fan of it other than the RGB lighting. But anyways, yeah, those are my thoughts on it. Let me know down in the comments if you've got a similar model PC or the exact same model, or if you're looking at it. And let me know down in the comments if you're looking at other pre-builts. And if you want me to do other pre-built reviews, be more than happy to. Just let me know down in the comments. And hopefully you found the information I provided you helpful. And if you got any questions, feel free to ask. I'm always happy to help and always pretty active in trying to answer all my commenters. In the meantime, thanks for joining me, and I hope to see you in the next one.